All right, so this video we're going to go over how to do the connection between the terminal expansion board and the main board for the two relay kit. Um, the documentation here is kind of key to a degree. It makes life easy, right? But doesn't certainly you could do it without it because everything's labeled. So if we look at this guy, what we have here is pretty simple. I'm going to use I think a pointing device here and see if that helps me a little bit with keeping my fat fingers out of our out of our way here, right? So ostensibly what we're doing is we're going to be connecting these headers that are here, these two 10 pin dual headers, to this header over here. Now, of course, all the connection, we're not mapping all of them because there really aren't that many. So what we have over here is the connections that are needed to run this board. Basically, bring the IO over, and create these additional 11 points where there's a terminal connection, right? This is the boards have been put in here. This is the enclosure that comes with the kit, and of course these cables are the cables that also come with the kit. Um, and other videos were shown that are how to solder this board together, and of course solder the headers onto this board as well. So one of the things to note is that these cables here, they have two different types of ends on them. And this guy seems to be going in the opposite direction of the other two, but there's individual DuPont connectors, and then there's groups. So this one is three. So this one has a single piece here that's all three together. You can't separate them out. And then on this side there's three separate ones. So the individual ones that are kind of hooked together, we're going to connect them onto this board. And the first, you can kind of see how they're separated out. If you look at the kind of the mask on the board, you'll see there's a 3 and a 6 and another 6, right? So that's exactly what we have for our cables here. We have our 3, our 6, and then we have another 6 here, right? And then we'll use the individual sides to connect to the header on the main board. So pretty simple stuff. Like I said, the labels on here correspond to what they're labeled on this board. But something that's interesting is this board happens to come with the labels on the bottom, and this board, of course, has them on the top, so you can see them. I don't manufacture this board. I do manufacture this board, so I was, I made it so that you could read them when you go to plug things in. However, this one, maybe there wasn't enough room on the board, whatever, on the top, and I'm not going to question that, but they are on the bottom. They're there. So what I've done is actually in the documentation, I've created an image that kind of flips it over and corrects it so that when you're looking at it from the top, you can see exactly what you're supposed to see, right? So let me show you that a quick view of that documentation. So this is the image I'm talking about. It's not super beautiful, but it definitely gets the job done. And something else you'll see there is I put a black box around the ones that we're going to connect to. And typically the order that we're going to do these in, it's going to be from far right to far right. We're going to do that one. There's actually only 3 connections that go over there, and clearly you can see there's a bunch of additional connections that could be used for other things if you really ran out. But in general, I think probably 11 configurable I/O is probably enough for this kit, considering there's only 2 relays. So on as we go through, the first 3 of course will go on the right, and then the rest will go on the left, and they'll go in the order the documentation has here. So when we kind of get to this, if you look at it, on the left you'll see the black boxes around it. We do the left column, then we do the right column, then we do the left column and the right column, and that way the cables don't get in the way of each other as you go through and do these connections. So a lot of times I tend to, when I'm doing this one, I forget and I kind of skip over G35, which is there on the left-hand side as you go up, and for whatever reason I always skip that one. So I'm just going to warn you to be careful when you go and you kind of get to that point. Make sure you remember that G35 is there and you do that. Or what will happen is you'll kind of find yourself wondering why you have an extra pin or an extra line to connect to, and you've kind of gotten to all the way to the top where that 3v3 is, and usually the issue is that you've at least for me, you forgot to do the G35 one and kind of move on there. So without further ado, we'll take a look back at the actual board again, and we'll start to connect these in. So we're going to do the 3-pin one first, and I'm just going to kind of move these things around. I'll make sure I put it back into view for you guys, but it's kind of hard to do, top down looking at this without being able to view it from other angles. So our first one is our orange one, and like I said, that's going to go to V3, which is actually on the far side here. And again, if you had this have the documentation, you can just follow along there. The next one is G0, which is actually just 2 up from this one. Really, I guess skip 2 and then put one in, and we'll put that in there. And then of course the next one, the third one is GPIO 5, which is you skip one and it's the very next one up, right? So if you kind of look at what we have here, you can see how these are in there, and you have the first one, which is V3, and then you skip 2, and that's your G0, and then you skip 1, and then the next one there is your G5, which is, if we flip back to our other screen, you can see how that makes sense there on the right hand side. And hopefully that makes some sense. Again, if you're doing this with the kit, follow along with the documentation, and you should have a pretty easy time of it, because it lists everything out that I'm saying and doing. Right? So pretty easy to get them in. Nothing gets in the way. The next one goes in. We're just going to put that in right next to it here, and push that in real nice. And we'll start from this side of the the list, and we're gonna really start making connections onto this header. So I'm gonna take this guy, and I'm just gonna kind of tuck him over here, and kind of tuck him in, behind this stuff, and get him out of the way for us. And it can stay there just fine. Now, if you're gonna reprogram the board, you might find that these cables can sort of get in the way of this. Typically, what I'll do is I'll use a small screwdriver, or maybe a plastic pry to get into that. Yeah. So you can still get your fat fingers in there if you want. But we got the reset and the GPIO 0 there for programming. Okay, so the first one here actually goes to ground, which happens to be the first pin on the bottom here on the outside. So we're just going to connect that guy right in, and I'll give you a view of each one as I do it, and as I kind of walk through. Right, so there's GPIO 0. You can see where that guy went in. The first one there it focused nice. Okay, so the next one is GPIO 13, which is actually on the inner one, but two up in the order, right? So you can see how that went in there like that, right? And then our next one, you got to make sure you don't get them mixed up there. Sometimes they twist, and that can be pretty easy. But the next one up is actually 12, which is on the outside, and then 14, which is on the inside, literally right up at the very next header row, right? So we'll put this one in here, which is 12. Push that down there, and then the next one, like I said, is 14. Plug that guy in. I'll show you what that looks like, right? So if we're looking at this, these guys went right next to the green one. Get that out a little bit out of the way there, right? So we had, our ground one over here, and then 13 and 14, and on the other side of that is 12, right? So now we got the last two on this particular ribbon cable, and they are 33, or I'm sorry, it's going to be actually 25 and 33. So GPIO 25 and GPIO 33. They are not the very next headers, but the ones right after that. So 25 is here, and 33 is on the inside. So 25 will be the red one. So we'll go ahead and plug that in. And then 33 will be this brown one. That goes right next to it. We'll plug them in. And you can see how nice and neat and easy that went in, right? Those two next to each other. So once you're done with this this first 6-pin cable, you can see that there's 4 rows of 2 still left over that don't have anything plugged into them. So that's how you're kind of in the right place at the moment, and you should be good to go with your next one. You haven't made any mistakes, or at least likely haven't. All right, so we're going to plug in this next one. Right, and just plug that guy right in there, and then we're going to start making these other connections. So our first one is this purple one, and this goes to G35, which happens to be the very next one up, right here on the inside of this, So we'll connect to that there. Right, so make sure we push it down good, right? And then the next two are actually the two that are right above that. So they're labeled SVN. I'm sorry, on the outside it's G34, and on the inside it's labeled SVN, which the SVN is just how it's labeled on the bottom of the board. But it's also known as GPIO 34 or 34. So let me go ahead and plug this next one in. Again, going to go on the outside right next to it here, right? And then our next one will be we'll go to our next pin, which happens to be the SVN. All right, get that guy plugged in, right? And then according to the directions, the next one is going to go on the outside up here, and that's for SVP, which is also GPIO 35. So I'm going to plug that guy in. And then the next two actually go on this very top header, and they happen to be 3v3 and ground. Now, I wish these were color coded, but they're not. They're actually opposite. It looks like so. This brown one's going to go to the 3-volt, and the red one's going to end up going to the ground there. So again, don't get hung up on the colors. It's really not that important. Once you get everything in here, you're just going to close this box up and never look at it again. But there you have it, right? So pretty clean kind of connections between the two, and of course that 3 that's there, and typically I'll take it and we want to kind of just make sure we bend this down and just kind of put it in here. Typically I'll try and round it out so that you can get to these with the UART cable, but the idea here is to just kind of make sure we don't block this hole here, because your lid's going to screw onto there, and you should be good to go. And you can of course bring this guy over as well, and your lid will fit right on here just fine. So that's getting those all connected up, and from there you can go ahead and configure your IO points if you haven't already put the jumpers on like I haven't here. I think in instructions I think we have you put the jumpers in, but maybe you haven't. It really just depends on your cadence of work. But there's another video on how these jumpers work, and of course very well documented in the document that you get, and you should have no trouble setting up your IO. Anyway, I hope you have a great time setting up your IO for Octoprint, and we'll talk to you in another video. Thank you.